adventure on eco-commoning. And so that was the very beginning. We talked about its challenges, its histories, and we had lots of discussions about the theological underpinnings of eco-commons. Then last week, we really talked about the stories and saw it in application. And so that was kind of exciting to hear how people are living out the commons was really the next piece. And we had some people just at the beginning of the journey and then people fully immersed in the journey. So all parts and lots of great social enterprise examples were also showcased. And then today what we're going to do is we're actually going to dig into how do we actually invite people into like empowering the neighborhood to be the commons as well. So it's not just us as communities of faith, but how are we empowering them? And so we're actually going to do a live design jam today, or a social innovation challenge. That is one tool. There's many tools to empower and animate the neighborhood, but this is one tool that we're going to live out today. Sam.
Aujourd'hui, nous allons faire quelque chose un petit peu différent. Il y a 2 semaines, Bill et Ted ont expliqué le concept de l'éco-commune, ses défis, son histoire et comment nous pourrions l'interpréter. La semaine dernière, nous avons exploré des exemples concrets des communautés de foi et d'autres organisations qui participent dans l'éco-commune. Mais un défi a été identifié, la nécessité d'inviter de nouveaux dirigeants et de soutenir des nouvelles idées que ne sont peut-être pas les nôtres. Alors, comment faisons-nous cela? Aujourd'hui, nous allons participer dans un petit design jam.
Let us pray. O Holy One, O Creator, you've brought us together today so that we may find in you and each other in new ideas and inspiration. Open our hearts and minds to possibility. Help us to be willing to explore and risk and try new things. Be with us on the journey. Amen. And now we're going to do our land acknowledgement. And it starts with Sam.
Okay. Les territoires sur lesquels nous sommes installés ont sculpté les cultures autochtones pendant des siècles, créant des langues, des chants et la sagesse. Elles poussent dans les veines des peuples autochtones qui considèrent cette terre leur chez eux.
Settlers to this land didn't recognize the egotism they brought with them. They believed their culture had more value than any others. They forgot that diversity was part of God's vision for the world and represented the many parts of Christ's body.
C'est pour cette raison que nous reconnaissons que la terre qui nous nourrit aujourd'hui ne nous appartient pas. Elle a été comprise en tant que bien commun par ceux et celles qui l'ont connue pour les siècles avant l'arrivée des nouveaux venus.
We recognize that acknowledging the diversity of our world's views is key to the work of reconciliation. We understand that the land we occupy is profoundly connected to the Indigenous people across Turtle Island, not as possessors nor as owners, but as stewards and legacy leavers.
Nous sommes reconnaissants que la sagesse puisse s'épanouir et que la terre sur laquelle nous sommes tous et toutes nourris puisse nous enseigner à faire la route ensemble, réconciliés, respectant notre diversité.
Merci. So today, as I indicated, we're going to do the design jam and really talking about relinquishing control and activating community. And again, it's in French there. But really the question is, what is this? The United Church of Canada has really been supporting, oh, you know what, I messed up. We should talk about the agenda first. So what we're going to do today is the what is this? We're going to learn how to put on new shoes. We're going to understand who our neighbors are. We're going to go through a process of how do we do abundance thinking, have the abundance lens, collective asset mapping, brainstorming, and learnings. And again, the agenda is in French. So the first thing is, what is this? And so I'm not going to read this. It's there for you to understand social innovation. But the United Church has been supporting innovation and communities of faith for a very long time at this point, and we've always been seen as very innovative. And we have an innovation grant called the Embracing the Spirit. from the last 4 years of this innovation grant, we've realized that 50% of the new ideas that churches are coming to us with are actually created by the community, so 50%. And we've also found out that another 25% is a community of faith responding to what they're hearing in the community. So that's like 75% of the ideas is based on conversations outside of the church, which is really amazing.
L'Église unie soutient l'innovation depuis longtemps dans les communautés de foi. En fait, nous avons un programme de subvention Embracing the Spirit qui concentre sur l'innovation. Plus de la moitié des idées pour Embracing the Spirit ont été créées par la communauté. Et encore, 25% ont été inspirés par quelque chose que la communauté de foi a vu dans leur communauté. Les idées viennent donc de conversations à l'extérieur de l'Église.
So EDGE, the innovation arm of the church and Network for Ministry Development or Community of Faith Development, has run social innovation challenges actually across the country, many design jams, and we actually even help the Boys and Girls Club in innovation and entrepreneurship. Today, we're going to boil down some of that thinking into the workshop so that you can see if this is something you might want to use in your own neighborhood.
EDGE a organisé des concours d'innovation sociale, les Social Innovation Challenges, à travers le pays, des mini-design jams, et nous avons même aidé le Boys and Girls Club of Canada à innover. Aujourd'hui, nous allons résumer une partie de cette réflexion dans un atelier. Quand nous avons fini, on espère que vous puissiez engager votre propre communauté dans une design jam vous-même.
Great. So as we get started and thinking we're doing a social innovation jam, we have to think about what does innovation need. So these are really showing the 4 things that innovation needs. And it's here in both English and French, but really it has a new mindset. We need new tools. We need collaboration and abundance thinking. So it's in French there, so I won't, we have both there, so don't worry, Sam. So step 1 is then, now that we kind of understand, we're going to be thinking differently. When we're doing an innovation jam, we'll have to invite the neighborhood in. And so today we're all communities of faith, so we can't really invite the neighborhood in the same way. So each of us is actually going to pretend we're actually a different person in the neighborhood. So we're going to put on new shoes. Mettre de nouveaux chaussures. So first, when we invite people to actually participate with us, what does that look like? When we put on the new shoes, we pretend that we're going to be like them. And so what I'd like to open it up to right now, I'm just going to stop the share, is who do you think, if you were running a design jam or like a community round table or that type of thing, who would you actually invite to this? And I'm going to invite you in the chat to actually put down who you think you should invite to a community roundtable or a design jam if you were going to host this here. So in the chat, just, or you can unmute yourself and you can say, qui est les personnes que tu invites à cette chose, à un design jam? Est-ce qu'il y a l'idée, any ideas? Service club leaders, yes, perfect. Community other centers, social workers, okay. So we're really, really good at realizing we need to invite the nonprofit sector, okay? So nonprofit is for sure one of them. I'm seeing teachers. So teachers starts to go into more like government too, right? So who works for the government? Who are some of those other workers? Who is, yeah, the mayor. Thanks, Karen. Great. So you're starting to see it's nonprofit, it's government. Natasha, local businesses. That's totally what I was looking for. So for-profit as well. And actually, you're right. The more we look at this, everyone's right. Right? So it's going to be all these people. And a lot of times when we think about this, we keep on thinking, oh, well, we should limit it. Yeah, it's not limiting it. It's being radically hospitable, radically open, radically invitational. So everyone's right here, and the more the merrier, because the more lenses, the better.
So Carla, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So when you invite, what is the invitation offering? Is it when you say a jam, people need to know why they're coming. It's just not a blanket thing. So what is the key thing that you're asking? Is it for the use of a building, or is it for finding out from the community what needs are not being met?
So the latter. So
Okay.
it is more about inviting people to be part of making the neighborhood a better place.
Okay.
And it's really reframing that, like, that is actually our role in the neighborhood, is to love our neighbors. Okay, so what's going to be neat is I'm actually going to put you all into breakout groups today, and I'm just putting in a Google Doc that when you go into your group, you're actually going to have a chance to pretend that you're one of these people that you just named. So you're either going to be a community of faith, a nonprofit, a for-profit, or a government person. So all the people we just named, you get to choose to be one of those people. You could still be you, that's allowed too. But that's really what we're gonna do is you're either a community of faith, a nonprofit, a government, a for-profit, and you're gonna start when you go into your breakout groups today to say what hat you're gonna be wearing. So which person are you gonna walk in their shoes? And with this hat on, we're gonna get you to first start by describing how you're feeling. Like, who are you? What are your motivations? Why did you show up to a design jam? And have some like have the empathy and compassion to think like them. Sam, did you want to try that one? Okay.
Sure. Okay. Alors, nous allons maintenant ouvrir les salles de discussion pour une brise-glace ou icebreaker. Dans les salles, vous devez chacun décider les 4 dirigeants, une communauté de foi, une organisation à but non lucratif, un gouvernement ou une entreprise à but lucratif. Commencez par décider quel dirigeant chaque personne adoptera pour aujourd'hui. Vous allez discuter pendant 10 minutes. Pourquoi êtes-vous excité d'être ici au Design Jam? Qu'est-ce que vous voulez voir du conversation? Et essayez de vraiment se mettre à la place de quelqu'un d'autre qui tu adoptes aujourd'hui.
Thank you. Are there any people? Est-ce qu'il y a les personnes qui veulent une chambre en français? Si tu veux, mettre en la chat maintenant. Alors, it seems like we're not seeing anyone wants to have a French room, so we're going to continue the rest of today's Design Jam in English, just to help with making sure we stay on time. Okay, so what's going to happen right now, I'm going to create the room. Does anyone have any questions? With the Google Doc that I just put into chat, and I can add it in again, you're going to see when you click on it that you can choose, you put your name under if you're the community of faith, the nonprofit, the government, or the for-profit. So you put your name in that, and all you have to do in this first round before we come back is put yourself in their shoes and think about why they showed up. Okay, so I'm only going to give you about, like, I don't know, 8 minutes. I said 10 before, but 8 minutes. Is everyone ready? Okay. Question: what did you learn about your neighbors by putting yourself in their shoes? You can unmute yourself if you'd like to, raise your hand, or you can put it in chat. But I got a sneak peek of some of the conversations, and like, what did you learn? Yeah, Sally, go for it.
I learned from my group members that one of the main points was just the networking, to see what other people are doing in the community. And that seems to be a common, I have that for pretty much all 4 people that spoke, was the connections, the networking, the just seeing what is available within the community, not just within your own area.
That's great. Yeah. So there was the want, the yearning for relationships, right? And the yearning almost like our neighborhood has what our neighborhood needs. Right? So yeah, great. Any other insights? Yeah, Elise, you learned that some people's strengths are another weaknesses, right? But the neighborhood still had everything it needed, right? Anything else?
I think when you do this, and when we did, I think you gain an affirmation of your neighborhood and a recognition of its needs. We're all in the same boat, and sometimes we all work in our little bubbles, right? School, social workers, businesses. And by coming together, I think you find a lot in common and affirm that you're all working for the good of the neighborhood.
Right. So you identified that there is a common goal. Yeah. Right. And so it's a lot easier to have conversations when you might not all have the same values. Yeah. That can be different, but to have a common goal can really align you. And like, there was a reason why everyone wanted to show up. So you're right, like the affirmation. And I would like to like raise up that in the community, who else could bring in all these voices together? I like to think it's the communities of faith. I think if it's the government, there's a power dynamic. I think that like in some of the others, maybe the church wouldn't have been invited, right? So if we're really gonna have all the voices and stakeholders, I'd like to position that maybe that's a role that we have. Okay, so the second thing that we're going to be looking at is the abundance thinking. And you already started to highlight that this is something that started to happen naturally, like someone's strengths with someone else's weaknesses, and that was happening. So when we go back into our rooms this time, it's this abundance thinking. And the questions are already in the document as well, but I'm just going to also throw them in as the full questions so you have them, because the main questions is like, what are the strengths that we have and what are the weaknesses? But there's some other additional questions that might help you here. So I'm putting them into the chat of like, do you have products or services, human resources? Like we always look at like the communities of faith have the best trained volunteers, like hands down. And it's something that when we look through these things, like all of a sudden we go, okay, what does everyone have? Let's start digging into this. So again, in the Google Doc, I'd encourage you in your breakout teams to keep on adding in there. And because I'm gonna be spying on the Google Doc this time. And so it will help us with our next discussion of like, what collective asset mapping are we seeing? Sounds good? So I'm going to open all the rooms again and awesome. So I think we have everyone back again. So the big questions this time that came from there, I'm just putting in the chat, is like, what did we hear that we had together? Are there some topics that came up? I know that at first people were going, am I supposed to really think about my real hat or the imaginary hat? And imagine this is a lot easier when this is your real hat, right? Because you're really bringing concrete examples into this. But even here, it's what Jeff said before, is that like we're already seeing that some people have strengths and some people have weaknesses, but together we have everything that we need. But just looking and hearing some of yours, there seem to be maybe some topics or like what came up for you? Like what are some, like any examples of things that you wanted to showcase that were epiphanies maybe for you? Okay, so how about we just go through them so that it's just, we're all on the same page. And remember, we also have all of those Well, in the doc, you can see everyone's notes in there. But if we look at churches, what are some of our strengths? You can either let us know or put it into the chat. Like our volunteers. Yeah, Candace, go for it. I know you got to represent.
Well, I was asked to represent the church, and then we didn't have too much time, but I was actually seeing in the church representatives, what I was seeing in the various groups is that our strengths and our weaknesses are the same. So yes, the church has a building, but it's limited by the kind of building it is. Yes, we have a financial base, which is really great, but that's shifting, and we're having to find new ways of finding money because our financial framework doesn't work. Yes, we've got communication. We've already got, 250 people on our emails and website, and we have a website and all that, but we can't communicate into the community because the community, how do we get the community to understand that we're shifting our vision? So I saw when different people were representing different hats, they had the same thing, the same problems really, whether it's nonprofit or profit. You have strengths, but those strengths taken to extreme are also the weaknesses, so they're the same thing in a way that we're always working with. That was what I observed anyway.
No, absolutely. I see that in the notes as well. And it's interesting because what you were talking about for communities of faith is one thing. Nonprofits, they're typically smaller, right? They don't have that smaller base, but maybe they're more nimble. Or maybe so it's what you said, Candace, is like, what is your big strength also has a downside. It's like the same coin, but two sides. Even the government, we always think, oh, the government, right? Did anyone represent the government or a mayor or something who wanted to say like what they chatted about? Because we always know their strengths, but what about their weakness? Amanda, I see you.
Well, I mean, I don't know a whole lot about it, but it seemed to me that one of the strengths was that they had hopefully a real understanding of the neighborhood and the community in terms of speaking to all sorts of different people, and would know what the real issues were, and also could act as a connector between somebody who had a need and somebody who had a resource. The downside is that they're political often, and that can also be isolating and separating them from a whole group of people.
Mm.
That's great, right? And their power dynamic means that people might not be truthful. Like there might be other nuances with that, right? And so what does that bring with and the baggage? And they're only there for 4 years.
We also talked about the fact that they can be influencers and may have some funding opportunities.
Yeah. And then the for-profit. Did anyone represent? Oh, Ronnie, did you want to add to that?
Not really. I mean, I was a nonprofit social agency. That's the area that I usually am familiar with. And I think, as with everything, it depends on the size of the organization and how much resources they have. Sometimes they can be extremely helpful in collaborating. Like I said, Children's Aid, for instance, has been able to sponsor things, really bring resources and provide space, and because they're way much more endowed than a lot of smaller agencies have. Depend on so much on outside grants. So
Yeah, that's great.
It's a mix, but we're definitely interested as a whole. I think most social agencies want to be more relevant and be involved. And I don't think they're invited. Usually I don't think they're invited when, let's say, there's something happening in terms of planning in the neighborhood.
Right. And actually, a lot of churches feel that we're not invited a lot too to things, right? And so I think that that's a recognition of like, how do we start over communicating and start really inviting everyone in? Did anyone have the for-profit hat on that they wanted to share? Was anyone a for-profit?
Me.
Perfect.
So I took on the a for-profit hat and used a bit of sort of the neighborhood that I live in, which means it's an amount of small shops. We don't have, so in a larger neighborhood in Toronto, we don't really have the big box stores, but rather small independent shop owners. And the issue is that, especially currently, they're doing everything in order to keep their head alive, head above the water, so to keep alive the business, because of the lockdown that they went through. I observe that there's a lot of struggling and looking out for themselves as opposed to collaboration. Anything that went on during the lockdown, not anything, but many things that went on during the lockdown is at least somehow forgotten. And while this was all very creative, it takes some more initiative from others to actually stimulate that, because there's a lot of lost business at this stage that businesses have to come up with. So my point in our discussion was that there can be an openness to actually generate collaboration, but it needs to be initiated from others. And I think churches can open up this kind of collaboration, but it takes a serious initiative.
Gotcha, you're jumping to the next question already, but that's good. So it's interesting.
I took on the for-profit as well.
Okay. Yeah. So what are some advantages?
It wasn't with new shoes, because I don't have my shoes on. I don't have my socks on. But as a for-profit, we really don't know what's inside the four walls of a community of faith. We don't know what they do, what programs they offer, what they do with all that unused space they have. So a mosque is a beautiful place, inside and in the grounds outside. But what do they do inside? And do they have unused space that some of my business associates could use?
So it's not really a shock to me that the two for-profit hats both started to jump to solutions. That is totally the for-profit. So Katja and Peter completely lived into that role, which was amazing. And so it is interesting, right? When you're going to have these people in the room or in a Zoom call with all these different hats, we have different communication styles, right? It's going to be really interesting how that works, and just being mindful of that. But Katja and Peter have already demonstrated how we keep wearing our hats. We're going to go back into the breakout rooms, and we're going to flex that brainstorming muscle. We don't do it a lot. I mean, there's a lot of linear thinking and administration and other things that we're doing. And this is what is possible. So listening to each other's hats and what's happening, and let's just test how we do partnerships together. What could a partnership, let's imagine that. I'm not going to give us a ton of time because these are fake, but maybe they're not fake. Maybe a partnership does come out. I don't know. But just with these hats on, what could be possible together? And so Katja already had a great example of what our role might be with for-profits at this point in time. And Peter talked about maybe it's just translation of the abundance that communities of faith have, that maybe it's a communication thing. Maybe just doing a design jam in your neighborhood would have started conversations that wouldn't have happened before. Are you guys ready for this? Okay, enjoy. How did that feel? How are you feeling after that? You can throw it in the chat if you'd like, or you can raise your hand, or you can unmute yourself. Oh, Peter, go for it.
I really like what Candace was talking about in particular, which was to rip everything outside of the church and take it outside and start a bonfire and have marshmallows. And I was very keen on the marshmallows.
Marshmallows, you really can't go wrong. If only we knew what was in them. And I'm seeing in the chat.
Marijuana was in them.
Oh yeah, I heard that one. Samantha says it was energized at hearing possibilities. So it was a real change. Like often we talk about bums and pews, declining membership, like it all of a sudden it reframes things when we have new voices, right? About possibilities and abundance. There's a reason why we started with what are your strengths first. We didn't start with what's the problem in the neighborhood first. If you start there, that's all you talk about, belly aching, right? We want to switch the other way of like that sense of abundance, asset mapping is what it's called. So starting there, Jeff, thank you. A shift in energy, right? So it kept on going and then all of a sudden, it's almost like trust builds, right? So the icebreaker is one thing. We have a real icebreaker usually in these things to then like offering, this is what I have, listening to what other people have, giving some space to bubble up. Now, like what could happen together? Intrigued. Thank you for, I like the one word is perfect. So like, what are we feeling now? And so what you felt, I would like to proposition to you is what your neighborhood would feel as well. Maybe even more so because it wasn't made up. I wanted to invite people to talk about some of the ideas that came forward. Thank you, Candace. It is possible. And sometimes like just, it's the #1 reason why people do not do design jams or community roundtables is because they're fearful that it won't work. It's the unknown. So that's why you're right. That's why we wanted to host today, is so that you could live through one and be like, that wasn't that bad. In fact, that might have been good. So
I just say I would have, I have to leave pretty much now. I have to go, but I wanted to suggest that maybe if we had scenarios or ask us to use a specific scenario, each one of us could have brought one. But anyway, just because the first 2 breakouts we were general and we didn't get into detail, but the third one was much like to have a concrete example. So I suggest that scenarios are good. And thank you.
thanks, Ronnie. And actually Ronnie's group, I just put in what was in their Google Doc of some of the ideas that had popped up. But I know a lot of you guys were talking about different ideas. Natasha, need to find community mentors to help us understand the various sectors and help us practice so that we can have meaningfully engage them when we host this conversation. We need to make sure we're able to show up and be relevant. We need to build these muscles before we go into this conversation. You're right. Even going through this practice internally, even hearing, remember last week we had all those stories? We did the storytelling first to like understand what's possible, right? And to question, like, what is church, right? So each of those stories last week were thinking differently, right? And that prepares us to be able to have new conversations with potential partnerships and new relationships. Candace, thank you. You know that I think the great fear of the church is that we would invite everybody and nobody would come to the party and they would feel worse than they already do. Absolutely. But guess what? When people do show up, you just actually change the narrative. I would say that doing a design jam or a community table is the moment, it's the pivot. It's the moment in time that we stop measuring bums and pews and we start measuring relationships and differences in people's lives and community. That's why you have to include food. Very excellent point. Most design jams do advertise the food. Absolutely. Yeah, like honoring each other. Thank you, Candace, for thinking about other people's strengths. And yes, Sally, the fear of losing control. And so that it wasn't by accident that the title slide actually started with relinquishing control and animating community. It's very difficult to animate community if we're not willing to let go. It's called a leap of faith, I believe.
Dawn had a really good idea in our group pertaining to what Natasha said about how we could practice before we do it. She looks like she's busy. share that idea with the rest of the group, Dawn?
Well, Natasha did sum it up pretty well. I just became aware in our group that we were having a little trouble getting unstuck, and it seemed to me that before I would want to have a community jam, I would want to have a practice, and the way I would want to practice is with people who are going to give me really good feedback. So my sister is a business person, and I would want to talk about this with her, and I said to the group, my sister would have lasted 10 minutes at this meeting today, because for her, like, things need to move and things need to happen fast, and she's a quick thinker, and she changes on a dime, and she knows how to make money, and ideas come really fast to her. So I want to be prepared for meetings with people like that. And it doesn't matter to me so much if like the other community members are prepared, but if we can invite our group to prepare. And I also thought of a lot of our congregations' children. So we have a lot of young retirees, and they have really savvy 30-something-year-old kids who are in social services, every kind of sector, and they're very supportive from a distance. And you know, I would like to invite some of those folks to come in and hear us and help us get unstuck and give us the feedback that community members probably won't. And the reason they won't is that at a first meeting, they may not be invested yet. And it's much easier when you're not invested to say, oh my God, like, I am not going back to another meeting like that. So I would, like, what I want to do is I want to, as we said, flex these muscles and develop these muscles before the community jam, so that when the groups come, they, at the very least, we can model a kind of outside of the box jamming and thinking. If everybody else is stuck, let's at least have one group that's done a little bit of training for this marathon. That's just the way I would like to prepare, because I'm interested in the level of the extent of my inability to really jump outside the box here. So I really want some practice. So that's what we talked about at the end of our session.
So there's lots in there. That was a very meaty response. Thank you, Dawn. I wanted to unpack two pieces to raise up that are 150% true. Number one is, at the end of the first design jam, you should have at least 2 to 3 concrete actions, because some people will think it's too quick, but it should be what we call the low-hanging fruit or the small win. And usually what that is something that is highly feasible and really, really easy with low risk, right? So it's something that, like, it could even be a second community roundtable or a second design jam. It could be that, like, we've decided to create a community calendar, or we've decided like one partnership and highlighting that, whatever that has come out. I have yet to see a design jam with less than 2 partnerships for the church. Forget everything else that's happened. So that's a concrete action, so great point. The other thing is that this is the first time. The most effective design jams and community roundtables happen regularly. Change happens at the speed of trust or the speed of relationship, right? So committing like one time, but they won't come back unless you actually do action, right? So you have to show you're serious, because lots of people have conversations, but how do you turn it into the next thing? Any other, and guys, guess what? All of this that we're talking about, Sarah's gonna send this out, the recording, like all the facilitated parts here, the questions, the PowerPoint that we've shown, we're gonna be able to send that all out to you, and you can adapt it of whatever makes sense in your neighborhood. And we are hopeful that you see this happening in your neighborhood. Any other statements before we start summarizing everything? Okie dokie. So I just wanted to recap. We started with the theological underpinnings and the theory. We went into examples and how people are applying the idea of the commons. And then today was really, how do we relinquish control, be radically hospitable, understand each other's lenses, ensure that all the lenses are at the table, and then continue to build that community fabric together. So hopefully this is, and each of you, maybe someone's ready to do it tomorrow, right? Or maybe there's more muscle flexing that has to happen first, right? So the big thing for us is that Community Innovation Hub, that's what we're here for. It's a network of peers supporting each other, talking through these questions. And I know that many of the Hub members, I think, have fallen in love with each other in a good way. And so what I do want to invite you all to is to the website of the Community Innovation Hub. I'm just going to, actually, Sarah, can you throw it into the chat for me, or Sam? And basically, we gather usually once a month for peer support of some sort of mastermind where they actually support each other. And then we try and do technical skills as well. We're going to do a big debrief in July with all the membership, but we're also going to do a Social Enterprise 101 workshop in July. So we'll get that out to everyone very soon. If you want to learn about any of that, make sure you're in touch with Sarah. Sarah, can you throw your email into the group chat as well? And she'll make sure you're on the list. But I think because you're here, you already are. But just a reminder as well, like we are trying to create a network of churches thinking like hubs and churches thinking like commons and supporting each other, really understanding that peer support is super important. So today we learned about Design Jam. We have a whole bunch of other kits and things like that that we'd love to share with you, as well as even helping people know what grants are available to them and just making sure that we're like, I know that if you want to get in some media, we try and help you get into the media that you might be interested in. So if you are interested in becoming a member, it is only $100 per year. We're happy to have a conversation about what that looks like, and if that's the right fit with you, that can be to Sarah or to myself as well. So I hope that you guys are excited about this thinking. A couple years ago, I would say there's like less than 5 churches thinking this way. And I hope that when you look around at everyone here, that you are not alone. And everyone here is actually thinking and hopeful